What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so this happened actually a couple of days ago, but I didn't really, you know much about it. Still, there's not a lot of details about this situation, but I want to talk about it finally. So, of course, there was a shooting that occurred at a Georgia high school. And I believe this happened on Wednesday. And I don't see the name of the high school. I'm trying to find it out right now. Okay. The high school where the shooting occurred was called Appalachia High School. I don't know exactly what county that was in. But the shooter, or the alleged shooter, I got to put that since he hasn't actually been convicted yet. The alleged shooter, 14-year-old Colt Gray, took the lives of four people, two teachers and two students. And the names of these individuals, and I see that the town is called Winder, Georgia. The two students' names were Mason Shermanhorn and Christian Angulo. And the teachers were math teachers, Richard Aspinwall and Christina Irami. And he wounded 9 others. So altogether, he shot 13 people. He was arrested on Wednesday after surrendering to school resource officers. Resource officers has now been charged as an adult with 4 counts of red rum. That's backwards. The alleged shooter's father, 54-year-old Colin Gray, was later arrested and charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, 4 counts of manslaughter, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or the GBI, said. Now, according to reports, just last year, the FBI the FBI interviewed them, or at the very least, the FBI contacted the GBI. Whatever the case, the father was interviewed by law enforcement because the son was making terroristic threats on a gaming website. Might have been Discord, if I'm not mistaken. And at the time, the father was vouching for the kid, I guess, saying, there's much to do about nothing. He's not really a threat. Blah, 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 yakety schmackety. This occurred, I think, in May 2023. Matter of fact, during the interview, it says here, Colin Gray told investigators that his son had been having a hard time in school where he was picked on by other students. He said that the two of them had discussed gun safety and hunting and that he would have been, quote, mad as hell if the boy had been making threats online as suspected. Well, the reason why the father's in trouble is because the father provided this boy, a boy, with an AR Platinum style weapon. Not just a boy, but an emotionally disturbed and, I'm assuming, mentally unbalanced boy. So the father faces up to 185 years in prison. The boy, from what I could tell, faces a life sentence. Well, he faces a life imprisonment. But because he's 14 years old, I think that he will not be put to death. And I'm assuming since he's 14, the first 4 or maybe 3 years of his incarceration would be at some juvenile facility before I guess he's transferred to a prison as an adult. That's the thing. Oh, boy, where do I want to begin with this? I remember reading, I think his aunt, the boy's aunt, right, said that this kid had been begging for help. He was begging for help for a long time, and that you know, society failed him, family failed him. You know who else was begging for help? The victims on Wednesday. They were begging for help too. Richard Aspinwall was begging for help. Christina Arami was begging for help. Christian Angula was begging for help. Mason Schlermohorn was begging for help. Hope I didn't butcher that name. The 9 shooting victims were begging for help. I'm tired of this thing where certain people, when they commit horrible acts, there's this instant reflex by many people to explain it away as some sort of defect. Because generally speaking, people like Colt Gray are supposed to be good people. So something had to happen to pervert his normally what should be good nature. I remember seeing this to a certain extent with Jeffrey Dahmer back in the day. You know what I'm saying? He committed one of the most heinous crimes in human history, and he had a fan club, and he had people who were gawking at and making light of pictures of the victims, ghoulish, horrible, gruesome pictures. Opposite when it comes to John Wayne Gacy. Not everybody, but some. I'm trying to figure out also, how did he get this gun in school? It must be detachable parts or whatever. I'm assuming he fit it in his backpack. But still, what's going on in these schools, man? Like, what's going on in these schools? What's going on in the youth society, and what's going on in our society and culture as a whole? When I was 14 years old, look, we all, to a certain extent, some more than others, had to deal with bullying. It's a fact of life. You can either take it or stand up to it. When I say stand up to it, I don't mean using a weapon and deleting people. I mean fighting back, or some sort of conflict resolution, and stop being a victim. Dish it back. If people are talking about you or making fun of you because of your clothes or your socioeconomic status or whatever, well, hit them where it hurts. I don't mean punch them in the dick, but I mean see a weakness and hit them with that. At the end of the day, life is not fair, and and I think a lot of young people have this fake perception of society that everything's supposed to be easy, everything's supposed to be a smooth path, and anything that causes them any emotional harm, a lot of these young people, they fold. It's crazy. Whether it's a job, you see people posting on social media as if working at Burger King is the most complex job in the world, so stressful, you know what I'm saying? I mean, look, the numbers show that fewer and fewer people are having kids. So you don't have the stress of kids. You don't have the stress of trying to pay your bills on time. You don't have the stress of dealing with coworkers. because that can be a bitch. You're a 14-year-old kid. What the fuck are you doing being this stressed out to the point where you have to go through these means to do something like this? And this is happening over and over and over again. And the father is a piece of absolute crap for providing his son a weapon. He should be in prison for the rest of his life. And if he was doing something more than that, it's, I'm noticing the media isn't really digging into this too much, but based upon what the aunt was saying, I sometimes wonder if some other things going on that's not being reported. But at the end of the day, I'm saying, if the child was, and if this boy was having to deal with a lot of stuff that kids shouldn't have to deal with, that's still no excuse for what he did. But the father ultimately bears equal responsibility for the situation, if not even more. Not even more. But I gotta say something too about this video game culture. One of the patterns that I'm noticing, I think you probably noticed this too. One of the patterns I'm noticing is with these shooters, these young shooters, 18-year-olds, 17-year-old teenagers, they all seem to be huge fans of video games and shooting games. And, young people, I don't want to keep harping like I'm talking about all young people, but young people stay on social media, right? And a lot of young people, man, they don't have the social skills that we did. Definitely my parents and prior generations had. They lack the social skills. So when they're bombarded with society's downside, when they're bombarded with things that aren't so, I guess that's where I'm looking for. When they're bombarded with things that are not so pleasant, they don't know how to deal with it. Because a lot of these people, they create this, invisible barrier. And they create these invisible walls, and they tune out everything about society. They just, I'm just getting up every day, playing this video game, online, social media. That's my world. And everything else on the outside is, unbearable noise that I can't deal with. And this is a problem with our society. Turn the fucking game off, go outside, and learn how to communicate with people, man. Because, one of the famous things that people are saying now, somebody's weird. You're weird. And yeah, a lot of younger people, we find us older people, 35 and older, we find them kind of weird, man. Like you walk past them and say hi, they get startled. Like you did something wrong to them. Like they I don't know, man. All I'm saying is, just because somebody cracks on you or says something to hurt your feelings, they don't give you the right to shoot them in the fucking face. It doesn't. And I'm noticing also, before I end this video, a lot of people are talking about, he's only 14. How can a 14-year-old be on trial for, potentially death row, even though the judge says it's not going to happen? Well, this country has put a 14-year-old on death row and executed him. This young man right here, George Stinney. George Stinney was executed back in 1944. He was just 14 years old, and he was a tiny little boy, only 5'1" and 100, I think under 100 pounds. and he was executed the old-fashioned way, not lethal injection, but electrocution rang through this little boy's body, supposedly because he was suspected of deleting 2 white girls. 2 white girls that was found on the black side of town, I think it was called Alcula in South Carolina. He was the nearest one by them, if I'm not mistaken. He was the nearest one by the bodies. They just assumed that he committed the crime, and he was executed. The trial was unfair. I think the governor at the time of South Carolina was advocating that this little boy be put to pasture permanently. And it was only decades later that this trial was seen as unfair and that he should have never been put on trial. Incidentally, according to many witnesses, there was a man, a white man, who bragged about committing those crimes, and he was never put to justice. So, yeah, this country has a history of doing this. So this is for all the sympathy that Colt Gray is getting. We pretty much know what he did. Okay, this boy right here was likely innocent. So, yeah, unlike what Tim Scott says, the sorry senator of South Carolina about America is not a racist country. Yeah, you're right. But anyway, that's pretty much it, man. You know, that boy ruined his life. Father's life is over. And 4 lives were ended. And 15 lives altogether have been altered forever. Tell me what you guys think.